This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The new year brings new health goals and wealth goals. Protecting your identity is an important step. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, LifeLock's restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Resolve to make identity health and wealth part of your New Year's goals with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Today on CityCast Denver, does the Park Hill Golf Course finally have a future? A potential land swap could put the 155 acres of dead space back in the hands of the city. Producer Paul Caroli and I dig into the rumored deal, plus a new debate on needle exchange sites and a listener question about some quirky buildings you've probably seen around town. Today is Tuesday, January 14th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Hey, Paul.
Hey, good morning, Bree.
Good morning.
Hey, before we get started with today's show, I want to just toss in a reminder here. Get your tickets now for Hay Day. Hay Day is a really cool event we're doing this March. It's an indoor fair with urban flair, like a classic county fair.
But I love the indoors part because it's March.
Yes.
It could be cold.
You're going to want to be indoors.
We're going to be inside.
It's going to be warm.
Don't worry.
And there's going to be all sorts of Denver twists on the classic county fair stuff. So like, carnival games, balloon animals, and so much good stuff.
So much fun stuff. I'm excited because we're doing tarot readings. And that's part of it. To me,
tell me about that.
This is to me a Denver thing, but that's because I'm tapped into the witch community in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's a Breeze Denver thing.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I'm a frequenter of Goddess Isis and Herbs and Arts and all the good witchy stores. But if you're not one of those people necessarily who doesn't dabble in this world, this is a great place to get your first tarot reading. It's like no pressure, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be in the witchy world, and you can get a tarot reading at Hay Day. So you can sit down and get a little bit of a look into your future.
My wife, someone gave her a tarot deck for, I think it was Christmas this year, and she did a pull for the new year.
Perfect. But first of all,
don't ask me what it was. Don't remember.
She knows. She'll be thinking. Megan will be thinking about it.
No, she knows.
But that's good because you should never buy your own tarot deck.
Is that a thing?
Yes, you should be gifted it. So that's perfect. Yeah. Megan's on track.
I feel the same way about CityCast Denver memberships.
No,
the best way to get one is to give one to a friend.
Gift it to somebody. Also, though, I do want to say something else I'm really excited about when it comes to sort of, I don't want to say fortunes, but we're going to have a Denver-themed fortune from Zoltar. I don't know how old you all are, but if you ever saw Big.
It's a big deal for me when I was a kid. I love that movie.
He goes to the fortune-telling machine and he gets a fortune. And we have one of those, but they're going to be Denver-specific fortunes as well. So if you don't want to dabble all the way in the tarot of looking forward into the future, just grab one of these. It's a little more passive. Either one. They're both going to be at Hay Day.
Yeah. We wrote these fortunes.
Oh, yeah, we did.
And they're funny and good.
We hope you enjoy them. But you have to come to get one.
You have to come. You got to get them. You got to get your tickets now. Hay Day is coming up on Saturday, March 8th. It's all day. The tickets are cheap. We're going to have fun. Carnival
all
food,
ages.
Denver-y carnival food, all ages, family fun. There's plenty of info on the website. That's heydaydenver.com. Get your tickets now at heydaydenver.com. Wait a second. We have a little surprise here from someone who's going to be on the grandstand stage at Hay Day. Let's take a listen.
I cannot wait.
Hi-de-ho, CityCast Denver. It's your old pal Bugsy Bug Patron from King Penny, Denver's own live improvised 1940s radio show. And we're taking a break from our regularly scheduled programming to bring you a very special announcement. Coming up on Saturday, March 8th, we'll be on the grandstand stage at Hay Day performing our unique brand of vintage-era make-em-ups live. That's right, live! Join myself and the King Penny players as we take suggestions from you, the audience, and create an entirely original 1940s radio show before your very eyes and ears. Complete with commercials, coming attractions, and a few other local surprises. Get your tickets to see us and other local artists on the Hay Day grandstand stage by visiting heydaydenver.com. That's heydaydenver.com. Until then, this is Bug Patron from the King Penny Radio Show saying, be swell, be kind, be seeing you next time.
All right, well, let's get to the news.
Yes, and we've got a really interesting topic that I've been waiting to talk to you about specifically. This has been brewing for a few weeks.
Yeah.
It's an issue I know is near and dear to your heart. City Council is taking on a harm reduction proposal. It's something to do with needle exchange programs. I'd love for you to give us the details to start us off about this specific proposal.
Sure. So needle exchange programs, just for like sort of too long didn't read
Please.
version of them, is a space where folks who use drugs can come and get clean supplies, needles, pipes, other things that they use to do drugs, but also dispose of their paraphernalia as well in a safe way, which is really important because we don't want needles in the trash, just like the regular trash. You don't want to see needles on the ground. And these needle exchange programs are a space for folks to do that in a safe, private way that's like not, you don't have to worry about it when they exist. And so this current proposal is to eliminate the cap on needle exchange programs. Currently, right now, only 3 are allowed in the city, which is not very much if you think about the overdose crisis that we've had and this situation with rise in fentanyl and unfortunately things like xylazine and other things we're seeing. So this would eliminate that cap and allow for more of these spaces to open. And again, this is not a safe injection site. This is not a place where people can buy drugs or use drugs. It is just a place to get clean supplies and information on addiction recovery services and just sort of a touch point for folks who use drugs to deal with healthcare professionals in a safe space.
Yeah, this whole safe injection site thing, I think that's part of this conversation, but I like the distinguishing it. That's not what we're talking. We're talking about something that's been legal here for like decades.
Yes, and it is all over the country and the world. These spaces exist, so it's not anything like new. It's just
what's the proposal? Why now? Why is it happening now?
I think because in part there is just a need. There's just we're continuing to see a greater need for folks to have these services. And this current limit keeps them from opening in neighborhoods where they might be the most useful. So right now there's only 3. And one of the big things that's preventing the expansion of them is that they cannot be within 1,000 feet of schools. So that's something else that this proposal would address. Which maybe
sounds like a good idea if you're a parent or if you're a kid or maybe you're thinking about kids. And,
sure.
But I mean, also schools are like everywhere all over the city. So that's like seriously limiting.
It's very limiting, and it's really keeping them from being able to serve the populations that are actually all over. They're your neighbors, they're your friends, they're people we know. People use drugs in all kinds of places. And this is it's something that's needed to help with this bigger conversation about overdoses.
So one of these needle exchange programs or like organizations that does this kind of work is the Harm Reduction Action Center here in Capitol Hill at 8th and Lincoln. I know you're close with Lisa Ravel. You've been, working with her for years.
Yeah.
What's her specific situation, just to give people a little bit more of the color around this thing?
Sure. So Lisa's been running the Harm Reduction Action Center for over a decade. She helped me over a decade ago when I had a family member who was using drugs and I didn't know anything about it and I needed help. And she was there. But one of the things is they've long been looking for a permanent space. So the Harm Reduction Action Center has been renting places around the city over the last decade or decade and a half to serve their folks. But it's hard because of this 1,000-foot rule. And they're at a place where they might be able to purchase a building and become permanent. And their search has kind of been hampered because this 1,000 feet of school rule means most properties that are on the market right now that could be used for that are too close to a school. And
real estate, tough
I mean,
game.
truly, real estate impacts every single thing we do. And I think it even impacts this sort of healthcare as well. So I think that that's part of it. Part of it is just that we've continued to see a rise in overdoses, and wanting to be able to serve more people would be helped a lot by removing these requirements that exist right now.
Let's get into the politics.
Yeah.
City Council is having their final vote on this tonight as we speak. We're recording on Monday. So by the time you all hear this, they'll have made a decision. We don't know what the mayor is going to do yet. Do you have a sense of, we haven't talked about the opponents at all yet. Actually, are there opponents? How many people are against this thing?
Yeah, I mean, when we're looking at the council vote for sure.
Yes.
So it went through an initial committee vote, which is what happens with most things before they go to the final council vote. And the committee vote, 8 of the 12 council members present gave initial approval for these proposed changes. But the council members against it, Flor Alvidrez, Kevin Flynn, Amanda Sawyer, and Diana Romero Campbell, all voted against
So
it.
that's members that represent the southeast and the southwest of the city, some of the more affluent areas of the city.
And definitely just a little bit more of outside of the city center,
Right.
I would say. Like, 'cause we're not looking at like Capitol Hill or Baker or 5 Points.
Alvidrez represents Baker, though.
She does. No, you're right. You're right. You're totally right. So that's so interesting now that I think about it.
I wonder if she's talked to Lisa Rayville.
I wonder too, because they were along one of the, before Harm Reduction Action Center moved to 8th and Lincoln, they were on Colfax, but even before that, they were in Baker.
So what did they say? What's their case against limiting or lifting this cap?
So Amanda Sawyer was quoted by Elliot Wensler in the Denver Post saying that she opposed because of negative experiences she heard about from residents who lived near a previous location of one center. She says, I can
Okay.
tell you that in-person needle exchange programs is a terrible neighbor, which I found interesting. And again, I don't know if I'm not unbiased in any way because I
Yeah.
talk to Lisa Rayville regularly. But one thing I know about the Harm Reduction Action Center, this is not the space that she's talking about. She's not clear on what needle exchange program she was talking about. But I know with Lisa, one of the biggest things that they do when they go into a new neighborhood is they go to outreach and talk to all of the surrounding neighbors and the businesses, let them know that they're there, let them know like, we want to be a good neighbor. They do volunteer cleanups every month around their neighborhood, just picking up trash. So the good neighbor thing is really important to harm reductionists. So that was sort of disappointing for me to see
Yeah.
Amanda saying.
Interesting.
But that was one of the why she's against it.
I'm reminded of, I checked in when I knew we would be talking about this. I checked in with a past guest on the show, Dr. Joshua
Oh,
Barakis.
he's
Do you
great.
remember him?
I love talking to
Really,
him.
really interesting guy and very smart.
And a doctor.
He's a public policy, public health researcher and a practicing doctor here in Denver. And he had actually been doing some research on this. I think he sent in a policy analysis to the council members who are weighing in on this. But he told me about this study that one of his old colleagues did that helped turn the tide of this debate in Florida. Because in Florida, they just a couple of years ago voted to authorize needle exchange programs. Conservative Florida. This is Ron DeSantis's Florida. And Ron DeSantis got on board with this after, in part, looking at this study that assessed the amount of just needles on the ground in
Totally.
Miami versus San Francisco, where there are a ton of needle exchange programs. And it was just obvious. They just had a bunch of people that went and walked the streets and just counted up how many needles were there. And in Miami, it was 10 times higher than it was in San Francisco. And it's just because they have these types of programs. So it would
amazing.
convince these more conservative, firebrand conservatives,
Yeah.
who you would think would be against this kind of thing.
Well, and I just love to hear that too, because it shows what they're doing. All they're
Yeah.
doing is creating a space for folks to come in and do their business and
Yeah.
leave. And a lot of that is just disposing of needles.
I think it's just so easy to moralize around this.
100%.
Because everyone is oh, drug users are bad. It's bad to use drugs, so drug users must be bad. So why do we want to make their lives easier? But when you look at the results and the practicalities and what these programs cost versus the healthcare provided, which is how Dr. Barakis thinks, it just makes a lot more sense to provide some of these services, and it's cheaper for the city.
Well, and I think there's just a lot of black and white thinking around drug use sometimes. And what we don't, it's I just think about this a lot when people are so where's the recovery center? Where do we make them get better? And that's just not a reality. A big part of the reality is allowing folks to make these decisions for themselves. But one of the things that needle exchanges do is provide a touch point for someone in the community to go in and get more information and resources.
Yeah.
And addiction thrives in isolation. Addiction is so much more prevalent when you are alone or you feel alone or you feel isolated. And one of the things that these spaces do is just say, you're not alone. Come on in. Let's talk about, you are allowed to just be yourself in here on top of doing this amazing public health thing, which is just getting needles off the streets. So
The other thing that he told me about that I thought was maybe the real battle here, because it sounds to me, I would guess this is going to pass. I know that Elliot
not
Wensler at
sure.
the Post said you're not sure?
I hope with all my heart, but I know that people get cold feet about people who use drugs.
Yeah.
And I'm crossing my fingers that that kind of information that Dr. Barakis shared with us will prevail.
I suspect it will. I mean, if 8 out of the 12 council members already did a preliminary yes for this, it sounds like it's going to pass. The mayor maybe is undecided. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk to him in a couple of weeks.
I'd love to ask him.
We'll talk to him about this. But what Dr. Barakis told me was lifting the cap is one thing, but that doesn't mean there's more funding available to actually create these programs.
Totally fair. but at least it gives space for them to happen.
Sure.
And again, with someone like Lisa, I know with Harm Reduction Action Center, they're in a moment where they might have access to money to purchase a building through a grant or something. And a lot of times those things have time limits. So if they can't find a building in this space and time, they don't get that money. And part of the problem is they haven't been able to find a building that fits this criteria that exists right now. So,
well, something to watch.
Yeah. So by the time you hear this, council will have voted. And
The mayor will still be deciding if they pass it.
Yes. And I would love to ask him about it. I'm very curious what he thinks. This episode is brought to you by Denver Health. Did you know that Denver Health is home to one of the most comprehensive pediatric care systems in Denver? From bumps, bruises, and fevers to more serious conditions, Denver Health's pediatric urgent care is there for families when their little ones need immediate attention. But sometimes a child's care requires more than an urgent visit. That's where Denver Health's inpatient pediatric unit comes in. As part of a level 1 trauma hospital, this specialized unit is equipped to handle complex conditions, ensuring children receive expert, quality care from board-certified pediatricians that you can trust. With providers trained to treat kids from newborns to teens, families can trust Denver Health's pediatric team to deliver comprehensive, compassionate care when it matters most. To schedule a pediatric appointment, call 720-928-2127. That's 720-928-2127.
Let's move on to another thing we're going to ask the mayor about.
Yeah. Oh.
Your favorite topic.
I regret to inform myself the Park Hill Golf Course is added again. Paul, we have an update.
Yeah.
I think that's the crucial part. However, if for some reason some lucky listener out there has not been privy to this years-long saga over land, can you give us sort of the shortened version of why the Park Hill Golf Course is in the news again?
Yeah, for sure. It's been a while since we talked about it, and just like I'm writing up some notes here, it's just like riding a bike, you know? I know this history like the back of my hand. But, you know, if this is your first time, right, for 100 years, it was a golf course. This is 155 acres of open land in the Park Hill neighborhood. Hasn't been a golf course for a while. The important stuff is that in 2019, a developer called Westside Investment Partners bought the land with the hope of developing it into something else, something that they could make some money doing, maybe build some housing. But they needed to get the city on board because there is a very arcane zoning law, this instrument called a conservation easement that essentially limits the use of the land to be a golf course. And yes, there are a ton of other details around this. I'm skipping a lot of things, but here's what I think is important.
We can put a link to the show notes of every episode we have talked about this on.
Yes. So that their purchase in 2019 for $24 million kicked off 5 years of fighting amongst the neighbors and then amongst the whole city, housing activists who were like, density, yes, build housing. This is a perfect opportunity. And then like it got national attention because there's been this huge nationwide like turn against golf courses. And we're in this, we're in the West where there's not a lot of water. Why would we have a golf course?
But blah, also blah, blah. Concerns over, can we just let developers do whatever they want? Sometimes these things are in place.
We heard a lot of that from the neighbors in Park Hill, that's for sure.
Sure.
And then, so culminated 2 years ago in a citywide vote where Denverites said no to the developers. So they were not allowed to build their proposal for mixed use housing, retail, et cetera, new park. And since then, Mayor Johnston has been negotiating with them on what to do about it. Maybe possibly buy it back. But effectively for the neighbors in Park Hill, there's a fenced off former parking lot that is just in disrepair.
Former park that people were walking in. We're walking their dogs and stuff. I remember our own newsletter editor, Adrian Gonzalez, lived over there and said he walked his dog over there regularly. And then after this deal happened, or after this vote happened, it got fenced off. And now it's
by security guards.
Yeah, and there's giant no trespassing signs over a giant piece of land in the middle of a neighborhood.
Yeah, I think there are some people that still go in there, but that's what I've heard.
Well, they're not jumping the fence to walk their dog, But something is new. We know something new.
We have some news. The mayor, when he was on our show probably 6 months ago, he said they were negotiating with Westside. The latest is a report from CBS last week that said that there is a land swap deal in the works between the city and Westside. Westside, for people who are really super into this stuff. Kenneth Ho, who was leading the whole project.
Yeah, we talked to him
before the vote for West Side. He's no longer with West Side. The West Side official who was talking about this to CBS was Andy Klein. If that's important to somebody. And they're talking about a land swap deal that would see the 155 acres of former golf course be transferred to the city. And then in exchange, West Side would get some land, quote, at or near Denver International Airport that could then be developed. So like out by that Pepsi bottling plant maybe, or, maybe by the hotel. It's unclear how at or near the airport. I think that's the side of this that people are a little less focused on, but that's also quite interesting to me.
The location of the land?
Yeah, what does West Side want with land near the airport?
Yeah, but I've been thinking that since they built the airport, and there's still plenty of things being built around it, so maybe they have a plan. But it is interesting. A land swap is not uncommon. These do happen, but value of land is very questionable.
Yeah, and in this case, the value is really interesting too, because West Side bought it for $24 million in 2019 with the hope, that was built in with potential, because maybe they'd build this mixed-use development that they wanted to, so then they'd make a whole bunch more money than that. That's a high-risk purchase for them, and it did not pay off at all. So what's the fair price? And then also on the mayor's side, he's getting all this pressure from us and the media, and people ask him about this all the time. What are you doing with Park Hill Golf Course? So he's like under pressure to
do something.
And that's like him losing leverage, basically, because West Side knows he's on the clock with his electorate to make a deal. So I don't know. I mean, I really wonder what the value of this is going to be and like how much land they're looking at. And apparently it could be finalized any minute.
I was just going to say,
literally,
so do we
as
have
we
a
speak.
time frame? Because we have been having this conversation for years. Is there an end sort of in sight for this part of the situation?
Like I said, CBS says their sources say the deal could be done anytime now. I mean, it could be this week, could be next week. It seems like they're pretty much working out the details. But honestly, then that's just the beginning, because once the city owns this land, they still have the conservation easement on it that requires it to be a golf course or nothing, I guess. So like, what does the city do? And like, it's not like the city is flush with money right now. We just had this huge drop in sales tax revenue in the last year. So like, is there really going to be an appetite for the city to build some of these like crazy plans that some of the neighbors have put forth? Not crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say some ambitious
exciting
and very
plans.
like utopian desires for different use of an open space.
Sure,
I would say.
Yeah, some people are like skating rink, mall,
pollinator garden.
Although that was something the West Side wanted to do.
Yeah, true.
People were like, no thanks. I do wonder, like in 5 years, are we going to be looking back at this if the land is still derelict and thinking, we should have just taken the deal. Maybe it didn't look like a great deal, but it was something. The money ran out. Such bad timing. We should have just done it when we had the chance.
Yeah, I mean, also though, I don't know. The conversations that we had around this legislation before it went to the ballot had me really thinking differently about. It wasn't just about should we develop this land? It's like, should we allow developers to change laws? And I think that's was a big concern for folks.
It didn't feel good. So a lot of parts of it didn't feel great to a lot of people.
What I'm wondering is like, so the mayor didn't announce any immediate plans for it, right? Just said, they said, we don't know.
We know that they want to maintain it as open space.
Okay.
That's something that Andy Klein said. He said to CBS, the city and I agreed to honor the wishes of the public who voiced their desire to turn the former golf course that was Park Hill into open space.
Okay.
So it seems like that's the message they received.
I'm just thinking as a community member, like how much does the city owning the land versus a private developer owning the land have any immediate impact on my life? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's just hard to know. Is something going to change?
I mean, the city's probably not going to be paying for security guards.
True.
So at the very least, I would expect those expenses to come down. You can start walking your dogs in there again soon.
Yeah.
Other than that, I really don't know. I mean, I don't think there's any money in the city budget this year to like build something on that land. So in the short term, I would expect nothing to change.
I know. I was just thinking about what did we last see with the budgets in the parks? We had to cut the budgets for the existing flower gardens in the parks that do exist. So I see this being a really tough situation that we're going to continue to be in as a city.
Well, we'll ask the mayor about it. We want to know what you think is important too, because we would love to pass along your questions and comments to the mayor. So let us know. We would be happy to share a question from you. If you have one for the mayor about what he's interested in or maybe what he's not thinking about that you care about.
Park Hill Golf Course or not, any question you've got for the mayor.
Yeah. Let us know. Text your name or neighborhood or leave us a voicemail at 720-500-5418.
you, our brilliant and hilarious listeners, about the things that you care about. Every Tuesday, we like to share a comment or answer one of your questions that's come through the CityCast Denver hotline, or in this case, the CityCast Denver
P.O. Box.
And
which we don't tell people exists. And I kind of want to discourage this because I'm sorry, listeners, I forgot how to check it.
And
I don't know how to check it.
So we got a beautiful postcard, but when did we get this postcard, Paul? We didn't even know about it.
8th of January, 2024. And I'm so sorry to listener A. Cybel that it has taken us so long. But fortunately, the people at the P.O. Box gave us a little digital representation of this postcard. It's very sweet.
Do you want to read
this
it?
looks like a sure, yeah, I'll read it. Okay. Hi, CityCast Denver crew. I've been wondering for a while what the history is of the buildings in town that look like they swallowed the one in front of them. What's up with this architectural phenomenon? Examples: the empty buildings on Colfax, Park and Franklin, 4489 Grant Street.
And then 555 East 11th?
Yeah.
That's what it
Do you
looks
know
like.
these addresses?
I looked them up. I think the Colfax Park and Franklin one's going to be most familiar for folks because this was just a conversation that the Colfax Avenue Business Improvement District was
those
having.
2 old mansions.
Yeah, so they're 2 old mansions on the back side of them, but on the front side, they've got a little bit more newer architecture that I think is probably from the 40s or 50s. So anecdotally, what I've always assumed and what I've learned about as Denver has grown is a lot of times these buildings just get additions. So that's what you're seeing is the existing structures from one era. And then the owner of that building, instead of tearing it down and building something else, just builds onto it. And that's what you're seeing is you're seeing like 2 different eras of architecture melding through a remodel. It's not, I don't think it's any sort of architectural phenomenon as much as it's a, how do we creatively use the thing that we have, which honestly can be a little foreign to Denverites because we're so used to things just getting scraped and restarted. And this is not something that was uncommon, I think, back in the day. I think about my uncle has this tiny little bungalow in DU, and it was a tiny house on a lot. And then someone purchased an old army barrack and put it on the front of the house and attached it to the house. So his house is this like little collection of buildings. It's hilarious. It's his own little abode where he paints and hangs out with his cat. But it's what came to my mind when I read this was just like, think of it as just creative reuse of a building, and it's an addition. So that's what you're seeing. I hope that answers your question. If you're listening to this, hey, Siebel, I'm sorry it took us a year to respond to you.
Thank you for writing in.
Really, we're sorry we didn't know that this beautiful postcard existed, which we can only see one side of because it was scanned in.
I'll figure it out. I'll go get it.
I would love to see it. Well, that was so fun. I love the postcard. It was really nice.
Hey, and we're looking for more feedback on this episode that we're working on. We put out the call last week for people's toxic Colorado traits. That thing that you shouldn't do as a Coloradan, but maybe
you do it anyway.
There's been some really funny and good ones coming into the inbox, and I just, want to re-up that because I want to hear more. Let us know, what is your toxic Colorado trait? 720-500-5418.
Thanks, Paul.
See you next time, Bree.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Westside Investment Partners founder Andy Klein about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. And if you love the show, buy your ticket now for Heyday, a classic county fair with a distinctly Denver twist on Saturday, March 8th. For tickets and more information, go to heydaydenver.com. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you later. Indoors, no snow. You can wear shorts and flip-flops. You can wear shorts and flip-flops no matter what, but because you probably will.